Okay, so chapter 7 of The Outsiders starts, and we're in the hospital with Pony, Dairy, and Soda Pop. They're just kind of waiting around in the waiting room, waiting to hear about Dally and Johnny, and eventually they do hear from a doctor that Dally will be okay after a few days, but Johnny they really don't know about yet. Throughout the whole chapter, we see Pony trying to not think about Johnny, in fact, because there's still a chance that he might die. While they're in the waiting room, some police and some reporters show up to interview them about everything that's happened, about Bob's murder, as well as what happened in the church. So they do that for a while. Then after that, they drive home and go right to sleep. Next morning, they wake up, and it's kind of things back to normal. The gang comes over, with the exception of Dally and Johnny, of course, because they're still in the hospital. But Two-Bit and Steve come over. And they also kind of hang out in the morning. They're having a good time trying not to talk about Johnny. They're just hanging out. Dairy, Soda, and Steve go to work. Two-Bit and Pony are just hanging out all day. And at some point during the day, they run into the Socs that jumped Pony and Johnny. So when they first show up, it seems like it's going to be a contentious situation. Two-Bit thinks that they're there to try and fight. Like these are the people who just had their friend murdered by the greaser's friend, and there's a fight planned between them. It just seems like it's going to go bad. But it turns out Randy, who is Bob's best friend, is just there to talk to Ponyboy. And he asks Pony if he wants to talk, and Pony says sure. So they go into Randy's car to talk. And in this conversation between Randy and Ponyboy, we really get to see how much Ponyboy's point of view has changed since the beginning of the book, when he was talking to Cherry Valance and he didn't really agree with her that things were rough all over after she told him that. He kind of thought to himself, like, yeah, sure, it's really hard to be a Soc with all their money and cars and girls and nice shirts and stuff. But now he's kind of flip-flopped and he's on the other side. He's more in the opinion that it's really, social class doesn't really define a person. Let me find that scene with Randy. So the first thing we see that shows this is when Randy says, like, I read the story in the paper about you saving those kids, and I didn't think a greaser could have done that. And Pony says, greaser didn't have anything to do with it. He says, Two-Bit wouldn't have done it, but I did it. You would have done it, but maybe your friend wouldn't have done it. He says it's about the person, not about the social group. And Randy kind of doesn't really agree with this, but they just go on, they keep talking. Then later, at the very end of their conversation, Randy says, thanks, Grease, talking to Pony. And Pony says, don't call me that. My name's Ponyboy. Nice talking to you, Randy. So this is another example of Pony starting to see the individual, Ponyboy, and Randy instead of the group, the greaser or the Soc. Whereas at the beginning of the book, that's how Ponyboy introduced himself. He defined himself as a greaser. One big disagreement they have that's really interesting is when Randy's just talking to Pony about how he's really struggling with this whole situation, how he doesn't want to go to the fight, how Bob's murder has really affected him. And Pony says, I'd help you if I could. And Randy says, no, you wouldn't. I'm a Soc. You get a little money and the whole world hates you. And Pony responds, no, you hate the world. This is a big disagreement. And it's a disagreement that I think is present all the way up to modern day, 50 years after this book was written, where from the rich person's perspective, they think, I'm rich, people hate me for it. And from the poor person's perspective, it's like, no, the rich people hate everyone else. Just an interesting disagreement that they have, and they don't really talk about it any more than that. They kind of just say, okay, that's your opinion, we'll move on from here. The last thing I want to talk about in this chapter, because that's basically everything that happens, is Ponyboy's kind of obsession with age in this chapter. So we know age is important in this book because just 2 chapters ago, in chapter 5, we saw Pony and Johnny talking about Robert Frost's poem, Nothing Gold Can Stay, of which the theme is when people, are young, they have this youth and this purity and this innocence, but then it goes away when you get older. And that poem really affects Ponyboy. He really relates to it. And we see that in this chapter. The first thing that stands out to me when it comes to age is when they get home from the hospital, Pony stays in the car and just kind of pretends to be asleep. This is like a classic little kid thing to do. I think we've all done it at some time or another. When you're little and you get home, it's late and you're really tired, and so you just like lay in the car because you want your parents to carry you into bed. Pony does that, and Derry, who's effectively his parent in this book, does carry him into bed. So to me, that's like Pony trying to hold on to his childhood or his youthfulness. He's trying to still be young. He doesn't want to grow up. He wants to stay gold, like it says in the poem. Then later on, when he is watching Soda sleep, he says Soda looked way younger when he was asleep, and he says, actually, now that I think about it, I thought the same thing about Johnny back at the church. Maybe everyone just is younger when they are asleep. I don't really have any insights about this. It just is another example of Pony being really interested in age, and not really physical age, but the age of like a person's soul. And then the last time age comes up in this chapter, so this is 3 times in just, I don't know how long this chapter is, 15 pages or so, is when he's talking to Randy, and he looks at him, and he says, Randy was just 17, but he looked at least 10 years older than that. And he doesn't say this because Randy's got, a beard or wrinkles or anything like that. He says this because Randy's just been through a lot in life. Randy's lost his purity and his innocence or his goldness because of all the things he's been through. Mostly Bob's murder, but everything after that too. Bob's mom having a mental breakdown and things also. So I just wanted to touch on that because I think it's really interesting in how obsessed, I would say, Pony is with age and how it relates back to the poem, which is one of the most important things in the whole book.